Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today is going to be, yes, another face mask, but it does have free patterns and there's a link to that on Facebook. So, I guess that's something. Sorry there hasn't been a lot of, my usual cosplay and prop type stuff, but with conventions not being around and with everything that's going on, I thought it would be appropriate to do something like this with, some free patterns. And today we're going to be doing a Guy Fawkes mask. And I actually put the filters in the nostrils, so that's a thing. And without me rambling anymore, let's just go ahead and get right into the video. Okay, so first thing I've done is cut out all my patterns. I did straight cuts, well, as straight as I could on everything. These were tricky to cut out, especially since I really needed to hug as closely as I could to the line. 7 pieces in total. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 for each side. So on the patterns that are on Facebook for free, I will try to arrange them in this order as well as I can, considering space on an 8.5 by 11 or A10 format piece of paper, so that everything can fit in. But you can always just screenshot this. It's not terribly imperative, but I do feel like it, at least me, to be mentally organized. Now, to glue all these together, I'm going to use contact cement. You can use barge or DAP, doesn't matter. This is DAP Weldwood contact cement. I like using this just because I can afford it. Can't afford much now with everything going on, but I can afford it in comparison to barge, where I pay twice as much and get half the amount. However, the barge does have a much thicker consistency, and I don't have to go back over a lot of times and apply more. So what you do with this is, if you haven't used it before, anybody that has can probably just skip ahead. You just spread it out evenly on both sides, so it has a nice wet look to it, and then you allow those pieces to fit. The first pieces and things I'm going to be gluing and applying this to are the number 7 on the inside, or outside, I suppose. It's where the two are going to attach in the center. These two are going to be glued together like that. And once again, if you haven't used contact cement, how it works is you apply it evenly to each surface to be bonded. You allow it to set for 15 to 20 minutes, depending upon the particular brand and the instructions. Okay? And after that 15 or 20 minutes, and it no longer feels sticky when you touch it, and it looks dry, then it's time to stick it together. Now, that might seem a little bit weird, since generally whenever you put adhesives together, you want them wet. But this only works because once both sides are dry, they make contact with one another. And apparently I didn't cut this pattern. There we go. And the other things I'm going to be applying it to is this V-cut, curved V-cut here, which is essentially what is going to be the cheek area. Like that. Do that on both of the number 1s. Don't worry, this will be the last time I show myself brushing on contact cement for this video. And also on these cuts here, on your number 6, like that. And also on this part here on each of the number 3 pieces. Okay, it's been about 20 minutes. These seem good. I'm going to go ahead and start putting them together. I know I did not put registration marks. I do apologize, but I was in quite the hurry as I was constructing this, since I've been quite unfortunately busy with things other than cosplay due to current events, and I will just leave it at that. The 7s together, the 1s, there, and you can see that's starting already to give you a bit of a round shape, like a cheek. And same with this one. It's together evenly, so the tops match up. Tugging and stretching on that foam there, give you that rounded cheek. 3s together. And that is to give you the rounded part down here on the goatee. And then do your 6s as well. So match those up. That's going to be your nostril area right there for the nose. Like that. Okay. Next pieces we're going to do is this part on the 1 here and the bottom part here on the number 2. You don't need to do the bottom, just the sides. And the bottom here on number 1 and on number 2. Okay, it's been time for all my contact cement to dry. But how I'm going to glue this is I'm going to offset this, okay? My goal is to get a consistent 3mm offset all the way up into the top here. Okay, like that. So the number 1 is sitting up higher and steps down into the number 2. Okay, now that that's done, the next piece that I'm going to put in is going to be number 5. Okay. And the number 5 is going to get glued in flush up here with the top of the number 1. Okay. You can see where this little point angles here. And that point angle is where you're going to want to put your number 5. And then the next thing will be gluing in the number 4. Okay. But we're just going to focus on getting 1 to 5. Just like that. Okay. It's had plenty of time to dry. And this I'm going to line up flush with the number 1. And like I say, you can see the little V that it forms here. That's where you're going to match in and shove your 5 in. And go ahead and let that just go like that. Okay. Same thing on both sides. Shove it in right up to where that little V is. Line her up. And then go ahead and attach it to it. Okay. Bam, bam. Now, next piece is going to be your number 4. And your number 4 needs to ultimately line up with your number 5. And the only 2 seams I'm going to attach together are going to be the top of the 4 and the bottom of the 5. I'm not doing both sides at once yet. We're going to leave that not connected. And I have a feeling I will end up at the end gluing this together with super glue and not using contact cement, just because of the complex nature of the way these need to be put together. And I do apologize for that complex nature, but I want this to look good. And if I did it simply, or more simple than this, it wouldn't look good. And I have actually simplified this from the original one, which had a lot more pieces. But I thought that just wasn't fair to anybody viewing this, wanting to replicate this project. So, both of your number 4s, you're going to want to heat with the heat gun and bend so that it has a curve. Because this is going to be the bottom lip of the mask right here. You don't have to curve it. You could, I suppose, glue it offset outwards and then just sand and round it off with the Dremel. I will probably end up doing a little bit of both. I'm not going to so much glue it offset, but I have a feeling I am going to have to, well, I mean, I always have to do some kind of sanding and dremeling on the seams. And if I choose, fill those seams as well. But heating and curving this is essential. I don't think a hairdryer will work. What I do is I pin this to a chunk of scrap foam, hold that in place as I hit it with the heat gun, and then I bend it like that. Okay, as I stated before, start from the outside. And follow it around up into here. Bam! Just like that. There, just like that. And if you have your number 5 piece level, it will create a small gap, but the number 4 is definitely going to create a gap if you heat it. It's okay, I'm going to go through when this is all together and fill all these seams with some super glue just so that they don't come apart. Okay, next what we're going to need to do is take your number 6 pieces and glue them in. So that they match up like that. There will be a gap here, and there's supposed to be a gap here. We'll get to that whole part later. But for right now, just worry about contact cement from here to here, and down along this side to the bottom here. Okay, back at it again. Okay. Take my nose piece, line that up. Okay, now I had to kind of force this so that this lined up with this. That's going to help push out more of that cheek shape. I didn't do the best of attaching it. I'm going to be the first to admit that. And there we go. That in there. Okay, now we're getting together the two halves of the face. Okay, so next parts we're going to glue together is going to be the 5 and the 4. well, the 2 5s and the 2 4s, I suppose I should say. So I'm going to put contact cement along there and along there. Join those together. Okay. Ta-da! Okay, next I'm going to put in the nose piece here, which is going to give it a very different shape once that is put in place. And that is, of course, both of these number 7 pieces. Okay, which we're going to start up here at the top and work this down around to the bottom. You're going to need to put contact cement on both sides of your 6s and on both sides of your 7. Okay, now for the nose pieces. Sure to line that up as best as possible with that corner there. Pull that down a little bit. There we go. Same thing on this other side here. Make sure those top pieces line up. And then just snatch that around to there. Okay, now we are beginning to get what will be hopefully the final shape of said mask. And then, once we get all this stuff to glue together, we move on to heat forming, and then I'll go a little bit more in depth into what I was doing off camera to save time in the video. Last but not least, now have to apply contact cement from this edge here all the way down on the number 2 and on the inside of the 3. And much how we glued this offset, we're going to glue this offset here as well. Okay. Glue this offset. Just like that. And same thing on this side as well. There we go. And lastly, we're going to have to glue the number 4 and the 2 and the 3s together. And that'll be the final part of the basic mask construction. Okay, there it is, all glued together, the basic shape. Next, I'm going to move on and use the heat gun, although I'm going to be very careful to try and not get any heat on this area here where I curved. I will put a little bit more heat on the nostril so I can flare that out a bit more, and I'm going to work on the cheekbone, and then I'm rounding this edge here off a bit. And yeah, so far I'm pretty happy with how it looks. Okay, mask, heat gun, cheeks first. This is a cheap heat gun. At least where I live, it's pretty inexpensive. These run up to in the thousands of dollars. However, those are used for like shrink wrapping in industrial packaging for pallets and things like that. This one I paid, I want to say $15 for at Harbor Freight. So that's about as inexpensive as I can find. However, these do wear out. But I'm going to put it on high setting and start with the cheeks. Pull that out, get it nice and rounded. Hit up the outside. However, as I'm hitting up the outside, I am being careful to avoid this seam as much as possible because heat and contact cement aren't always the best. Heat will sometimes cause the contact cement to separate. You can already see just by heating that cheek and shaping it a little bit, this side's already looking better. Let's do the other cheek. Yeah. Okay. Round out the jaw. Yes. There we go. Okay, thus far I have done all the basic heat forming. So now that all that is done, I'm going to take some crazy glue and just go through on the back side here and go ahead and make sure these seams aren't going to come apart. Do not want that to happen. Okay, the last pieces, I've cut out a 2mm EVA foam, and that is the mustache area. And that starts right here under the nose, and we'll line up with the seam on the cheek, just like that. Both sides, starting at the center seam, and then lining up there. Bam! Boy, it was really driving me nuts not having the mustache. It just looks so weird without it. Okay, and if anybody was giggling and laughing and wondering up to this point, if you've ever seen the movie Nothing But Trouble, yes, this nose does look a bit too much like the nose from Nothing But Trouble. So I am going to attach it here with some super glue. And those holes left as nostrils will be how I breathe out of this. And I'm going to put my filter material in there. Okay, took my X-Acto knife and put some cuts in it. And that's optional. But I thought it'd look cool just to put some lines going down the goatee and across the mustache. Unfortunately, like that one right there kind of sucks, and that one right there got a little beat up, but still pretty happy with it. Next, we're going to move on to Dremel. Okay, I think it's time to seal this. Okay, I did cut out a piece of 5mm EVA foam and wedged that in there. And used some super glue just to kind of hold it in place. Partly because I know as soon as I put straps on it, it's going to start to deform this, especially the nose. I have a feeling it'll pull a little bit tighter to my head, but this right here just ends up just not having enough strength to kind of stay where it is. I also don't use the most high quality of EVA foam ever, so that could totally have something to do with it. And to seal this, I'm going to go ahead and use some Mod Podge. This stuff is cheap and kind of goes a long way, but it's also non-toxic, and that's kind of the important thing, because I will ultimately end up sealing the backside of this too, so I can just sanitize and sterilize it and clean it. Not something I used to do with my cosplay mask builds. I mean, you could still use Plastidip or something to seal the outside of it, but I don't think you really want those types of rubbers and chemicals up against your face. Okay, so that's pretty much it. I just used my airbrush, which didn't work very well because the white was too thick. I had to fiddle around with it. And then just some black model paint to do that. I will end up applying another layer of Mod Podge over this, and also probably about 3 on the inside as well. That way I can sterilize it and wipe it clean as needed. And my filter material in the nose. But the only other thing left to do is put some elastic on it, which I actually unfortunately do not have. I have elastic to put on like I did with my other one, where it wraps around my head, but the way this one is cut, I really just wanted something I could put over my ears. And unfortunately, I don't have the right size elastic for that to do it in this video. I'm going to have to go get some at some point. Okay, so that's pretty much going to wrap it up for that video. I did, however, end up finding some elastic that I could use, and I just glued them in with some super glue and then covered that with little strips of EVA foam. Super glue has a tendency, since it is a chemical reaction with oxygen that causes it to essentially form a chemical burn, has a tendency to make things like elastic very brittle sometimes and kind of hard, not very nice on your face. Even though I got this beard, I still put some EVA foam over it just to cover it. And just to show you, it looks like this. Whenever I have it on, it is, I would suppose, a bit big, but the thing is I wanted it to cover my beard, so I measured it a little bit longer, and as you can see, if I pull my beard straight, it does still stick out, but with the way that my beard kind of curls back up under, it does actually cover it, which is one of the big problems I have having a beard, trying to wear face masks. I could shave it off, but that's just not going to happen. So as I mentioned before, the patterns are up on Facebook. You can follow the link to that and just click on the photo, and there should be an option in the little dots. You click on it, it'll say download photo. You can download it, print it out, scale it up, scale it down, do whatever you want. I have a pretty small head for an adult. It's 23 inches around. And since I made it so much longer, I feel like some people may have to scale it up, but for some others, it'll fit pretty much perfectly. And I want to end this off with saying, good guys win, bad guys lose, and as always, England prevails. Just kidding.